watching us on YouTube, yeah, live. So sometimes I'll ask questions on, I'll ask, like if they comment or send me a message, like I'll get their questions and ask them, ask you guys. So yeah, I'm Narek. I work with around 30 startups around the world, and mostly on the tech implementation side. And I had an agency before, and yeah, then we started Prolancier. So I'm the co-founder of Prolancier, and I had a chance to work with very great people like Nikhil and Artur. Yeah, so Nikhil started several companies. He worked with a lot of engineers, designers, and both locally and remotely. Yeah, and so within 15 to 20 minutes, he will share his experience with us, like how he was getting like the ideas, how he was handling teams remotely and in-house teams, and yeah, and give us some advices. Yeah, Nikhil, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So
yeah.
Great, thanks, Narek. And looks like Archer is here as well. So yeah, my name is Nikhil Nirmel. I currently run a company called Law Dingo, which is in the legal services industry, and we provide paralegals to law firms. But along the way, I've tried a lot of different versions of that company, and I've tried completely different companies, and I've just done a lot of trial and mostly error, as they say. Let's see. And then I was in Y Combinator in 2013 for this current company, and previously I worked at Yelp and Yodel. I think one thing that's somewhat unique in the startup world about me is that I am not a developer. I don't have a co-founder, and I'm running a tech company. So I know a lot of people have similar profiles, and you know, that might be interesting to some. I guess I didn't really prepare 15 minutes, but I'll give you a quick some points, and then we can go to Q&A, I guess. As for, I guess the topic is coming up with ideas and managing a team. So with regards to coming up with ideas, you know, I have no background in the legal space, but I'm, you know, the company's in that space. So I know a lot of people say, like, you know, find what you are passionate about, or find something you want personally and build something around that. That's probably valid. It's not the approach I have taken. I have taken find something where there is money and to extract some of that for yourself. Because my first startup was like in like a social thing, like connecting people with acquaintances or something like that. But there's no money in that. No one's paying to like meet up with someone they already know, and that failed. And then sort of a series of other things, things in the restaurant business, and there's really not that much money in the restaurant business, and that failed as well. So I think, like, look at my advice, which might be wrong, as all advice is look for opportunities in boring industries that you know, where people go to work there and make money or whatever, like, you know, insurance and consulting and law and finance and, you know, things that like other people aren't really paying much attention to. I think those are better things to go into because you know, you're not the best. I'm not the best entrepreneur out there, and if in spaces where everyone's trying to go there, there's probably people better than you. So I think there's some advantage if you go to something that you can, in the market, you can tolerate, where there's money, and you know, there's not so much competition. There'll always be competition, but you know what I mean. And let's see. I read somewhere, someone said, like, find a opportunity, like look at any industry and see what people are using spreadsheets for and build something around that. I don't know if that's good advice, but something I heard. And then as for testing an opportunity, I think it shouldn't cost much, and it shouldn't be that hard. And I think a lot of times people, and myself included, spend too much time analyzing the market and, you know, asking people. But just testing is not terribly hard. And ways you can do that is, one thing I've been doing recently is when I have a new idea, I'll just write an email pitch as if the service exists. And in some case, as I'll get to later, it's not that hard to make it exist. And then find an email list of your target market, which you can do in many ways. You can go on Upwork and ask people if they have a list. There are a list for, pretty much everything. And then, do the like mail merge thing where you say, hi, first name, I'm contacting you from such and such. And, you probably have this problem and here's how we solve this problem. And this is our prices. And, is this something that intrigues you or something like that? And then either everyone will say, well, in any case, most people will say, not interested, stop emailing me, but you'll get people who say, yeah, I'm interested. Then it's, oftentimes it's not terribly hard to get someone to say, yeah, okay, I'm interested, let's talk. Okay, sounds good, let me pay you. That doesn't apply for everything. I mean, if you're doing like a social app or something that, requires network effects or something. Yeah.
Like how kind of you came up with the idea of a social app and like how you were executing it, like how, from where you found software engineer, or like
Sure.
how you're thinking how you are going to acquire users, and at what point you were thinking you will just go to some VCs, or kind of you do funding by yourself, or generate revenue and kind of grow with that revenues. Yeah.
For social apps in particular?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've done a purely social app, and I think I was, let's see, for those, I think I just started building a product, and I'm not sure exactly if that's what I would do again. I think if there's, I mean, for a social app, yeah, you kind of have to start with the product. So, and I was going to get to that next, so I'll talk about it now. To do an initial product, I think you should start with something that, this is not advice, but something that's like stupidly, just for the sake of getting an app built. Like on my first startup that I did, which was a social app, I wrote out a full explanation of all the features I wanted to have, and everything that should be included, and said, okay, sent it to some developers overseas, and later they showed me what they had, and it was completely wrong, which is always going to happen if you give complete specs and aren't reviewing it as it goes along. I mostly worked with developers overseas initially because I didn't have any money, and not that I have much money now, but I think it's you can get more done in the same amount of money, and I think that's a benefit. So I forgot all your questions, Narek, but I think I used to do like SQL analysis in my job. So the one thing I became familiar with was like databases, and I think I kind of lucked out there because I think not an engineer, not knowing too much, I think knowing about databases is quite useful because whenever you're, like you might say, okay, I want a sign up page that asks for, information, and I want to know what states they're interested or whatever. I think it's helpful to know that, okay, you're going to have a user object, and that's going to have different attributes, and states, there can be many states per person. So you're going to have a separate state table. And, so there's going to be a user table and a state table, and, on submission. Right?
So, for interrupting. So say like you came up with the idea, like something missing in other social apps. So you started like writing the features, right? And after that, like you got the engineers, like I mean, from where you got the engineers, like what portal you used, and you used like and how much time you spent on writing the this thing, like the specs, and like what was the most kind of a challenging part while executing the app, and and I wanted to know a little bit more also how you were getting users, like why it did not become big for you, like what tactics you were trying.
Sure. So I've used Upwork primarily, formerly known as Odesk. And I've found great people like Narek, for example, to work with. And there's a lot of people who aren't very good, but it's not terribly hard to find good people. And you can put a job up there and get a bunch of responses, and have Skype interviews with the people who look good, and just get a sense for whether they can help you with your goals. As for writing specs, my process is typically like do some wireframes in Balsamiq to like get a sense for like what's the interface roughly going to look like, and then I use Pivotal Tracker for assigning tasks, oftentimes, or sometimes just email, and just start with like the first whatever's like the most critical feature, and not necessarily like relevant to your specific app, but it might just be sign up or create an event or something. And just like don't worry too much about the interface, just because the interface is going to be done pretty much separately anyways. So just get something that looks awful but does the basics of what you're trying to have done, like event can be created or a friend can be added or whatever, and then continue with that until like you feel like the thing you wanted to test is testable, and then test that with people. And then you can get a designer to do some interface, and then
and what about the challenge? Like, let's say you reach to some point, like how you were getting users. Like, let's say you've got something which is working. Like how you were, what was your kind of a strategy of acquiring the market?
For purely social apps where you're not going to have, I think a social app is in part distinguished by like relatively low revenue per user. Like you're not going to get thousands of dollars per user, therefore your acquisition cost has to be very low, and that can work very well if you can find low acquisition costs, which is I think probably why you hear a lot about virality and that kind of thing for social. It's because the cost has to be low. I've done Facebook ads to some moderate success to get some users, and if maybe it's costing you more than you're making, but that's fine because you just want to see how people are using, and that's how people are using it, and that's valuable in and of itself. You can tell your friends, of course, if it's something your friends can use, and that's a useful way to do it. And it's been a little while since I've done a purely social thing. Like I worked on a gambling app with Narek. That didn't quite get to the point where I got users. So I don't really have too much comments on that actually, because I haven't done a whole lot. But I mean, email again is pretty useful, cheap and free.
Email is good. Like even we're trying Facebook. Let's say we've experimented a lot on Facebook. Like things they're targeting, like you're selecting like exactly what you need, but sometimes you get the relevant audience. Yeah, that's one of the issues which I had with Facebook. Yeah.
Another thing is like if you're trying to target a specific kind of people, oftentimes there are organizations or groups whose membership includes those people, whether that's an online group or if you're trying to find, it's a social network for, I don't know, like new doctors. Maybe you go to like medical schools or something like that. But oftentimes there's ways to access your target market that doesn't involve marketing to them directly.
Yeah, right. Okay. You want to add something, or you want like other people to ask questions?
I'm cool with questions.
Yeah. Okay. So also, if you guys have any questions, like you can ping me. Yeah. I will kind of ask it to Nikhil, and also I'll ping other guys who are following us live. So I'll introduce Artur also. Nikhil, we'll wait a little bit till people like sending questions. Yeah.
Sure.
So I'll sort arrange them and I'll start asking them to you. So Artur, I worked with Artur for around more than a year. Yeah. So at that time with him, I was working on Juicy Canvas, and Artur is started against several companies. He worked with engineers again around the world. Like at that time, we were in Armenia, and he had engineers in India, Ukraine. The idea with which Artur came up was quite interesting, and even after that, many people ping me like, "Hey, you work on this kind of thing. Can you help us on doing similar thing?" So, yeah. So, again, Artur will tell a little bit about his experience, like how he was coming up with the ideas, how he was going, how he was planning the execution part, and what was the strategy of acquiring like users, and how he was getting feedback for improving the application. Like, yeah, Artur, maybe you can unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience. Hey, we can't hear you, actually. Yeah. There are some.
Hi, Nikhil. This is Udit here.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for this. So I have a question. So how do you go about identifying a new market, figuring out which market is good for me right now? Since you jumped into entirely a new market, right? I'm sure you'll be the right person to answer this question.
Sure. Yeah, so Artur, I guess let us know when you have your mic. We'll
Fix his mic. Like,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a tricky one, because oftentimes like you see a market and it seems awesome, and then you go into it and it turns out it's not awesome because you had no idea what it was about. And I've done that several times. So if you know something about it, like that's an advantage. If you've got some experience in it, then like, and you know what's wrong in it, then that's helpful, or maybe you have family or friends or something. But maybe something that like it takes like some skill of yours and it has some applicability to what you have. Like I used to work in lead generation at Yodel's a lead gen company, and I worked at Yelp as well. So I knew about like connecting people with local businesses. And so my original idea was connecting people to lawyers. So that's kind of how I got there, because I knew that like the legal industry is like a big lead gen opportunity, and and my skills could have relevance. So that's what I suggest. Like something that you either know about or some skill of yours might be relevant to.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. But would you recommend someone to just go into a market which which that person is completely unaware of?
Yeah, I think I would. Like I tried to get for a while into like life settlements, which is like the secondary market for life insurance, which I really knew nothing about, but like somehow I came across some opportunity there. And I think you can figure out what you need to know about an industry pretty quickly. And if you don't know about it, chances are like every other startup founder has no idea about it and therefore isn't considering it. So I don't think it's terribly hard to know like the economics of the business and who the players are in the industry, how the market's structured. I think you can figure that out just in several conversations with industry people. And so I don't think everyone would recommend that you do that, but I don't think it's a bad idea to go into a market that you know nothing about, because most people probably don't know about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, I'll hand it back to Artur.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey.
Thank you. Hey.
Hey, yeah, now we can hear you.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Okay. Wow. Okay. Coming up with ideas. Oh, everyone's going to do things, I guess, a bit differently. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to get a little bit metaphysical with everyone. In terms of what I discovered in the 10 years of doing this kind of stuff. I think if you're at it in the beginning, like anything, it's just and have no fear and just go with it. You're gonna probably fail, but you have to optimize for learning. So when you do any kind of iteration, think of iteration, the cycles, as not just changing something for the sake of changing it, but also taking the time to learn from that iteration. So that's more of a micro aspect of the macro, which is, the whole experience is learning. And what you're going to learn is something very interesting. At least in my case, it was. The passion is essential. You're gonna be knee deep in a fuck ton of work, and it's gonna get really hard, and it's gonna be hard on everyone around you. So to me, in order to survive that, it has to have a lot of meaning, as I found over the years. And that meaning can come from a lot of different places. For some, it's just, I want, some kind of success, and whatever that metric is for you, that you put on as a bullseye for success, then, that's, as long as that has meaning, that's great. But I found that my target for what meaning means to me has changed over the years, and things that I thought were meaningful initially, shit hits the fan, and you gotta, do the full marathon endurance that this kind of sport requires. You're gonna need something a little bit more, lasting and has more impact to just beyond, your bank account. And so, for me, I discovered slowly, it was like, okay, let's say I want to do something for a particular industry that I have some knowledge about. That's great, and you're going to have a huge upper hand because you have inside knowledge on that, and a lot of innovations happen because you're knee deep in that niche. But as a person providing, the solution for that industry, you have to get really intimate with the end consumer, and so you have to really think about that in terms of your experience, because you're going to need to know them really, really well, and you're going to be interacting with them really daily. So to me, it's important to consider that. Do you like these people? Truly, do you want to be interacting with these people on every level? Do you care about them? That stuff becomes a huge driver. It becomes part of your daily minute-to-minute experience. If these people are mostly assholes, you will become an asshole. So, these are things to take into account. You may not see it in the beginning because, you're just looking at ones and zeros and such, and it's great, and it's, exciting and all whatnot. But, at the end of the day, I think, what we're doing, affects people and society. So, to me, I started looking at what I'm making through that lens. It became very important to me. And when I started doing that, I started seeing other opportunities. Another aspect that helped me align myself, or I would say was a huge catalyst for the ideas and the compass, if you will, the inner compass, was traveling. I think that's an essential aspect of being in this field at entrepreneurship, startups, whatever you want to call it, pioneering. And what it does to you is something really quite magical. It opens up huge doors, physiologically speaking, neurologically speaking. It forces you into uncomfortable situations where you have to adapt and you have to see things from very other points of view. And you come across other travelers and other thinkers and cultures, and you start seeing that, wow, people tackle problems in a different way. Oh, they solved it this way. Oh, here's something that you see back home. It was solved one way. This is how they do it this way. Maybe the best thing is a synergy nexus of the two. Things that you really won't. Maybe like it'll come to you when you're in a room like this inside. And so I really highly advise, as part of your growth and learning process, to take a year off. Not only does it provide you those types of benefits, but it actually, in my case, you try to hit two birds with one stone, or three. And one of the reasons why I left New York City, where I grew up, was so that I could have a time box for myself where I could grow as an individual, and also be able to leverage the dollar that I had and the time that I had that I didn't have before. In New York, everything is like, time is money, nobody has time, you go, go, go. And that's great, and I think it's essential for a certain phase of the idea and the company. But if you need to kind of stretch out, you're bootstrapped and you really want to go the distance with that, there's a lot of countries out there that would love to have you, even for a few months, where you could really leverage the local resources, talent, and the time that you gain because of that. And that's really essential, because you really want to iterate and brainstorm and try different things, and not have this kind of exterior pressure every month with a gun to your head. So that's essential, and especially in the beginning when you're really trying to incubate and experiment and do things that are really amorphous. So how do we go to the next step? So Juicy Canvas, again, this particular project came out of something that I thought of as an idea that was brick and mortar, and was totally non-digital. And it was something that I discovered with my eyes here in Argentina. And I wanted to quickly put together particular kinds of artists and designers that I discovered here with markets in New York. And quickly that idea, as I started to put it on paper and think about it, it didn't work out physically. There were very quickly a lot of flags that went up, and I started to get pretty upset about, why couldn't it just happen? And it was only because, of certain import and export policies of the government. I said, well, screw this, let's go digital and see how this could happen. So, and so when you take something, let's say that you see that happens on the ground, and you say, well, how can I digitize it? Maybe add a lot of scalability to it, optimizations to it. The idea, by definition, starts to transform in its digital format, and it's quite interesting. Things start to kind of get created by themselves, because you have to adapt it to that structure. So. So it came about that way. Lots of learning, a lot of painful learning, a lot of ups and downs with it. But the most important thing was, you realize that the experience that you have, the people that you deal with, it was a marketplace that we made of people looking for creative products, and us making a social commerce place where we invited a lot of creatives that were underserved and all over the world, and connecting the two. and then trying to even make a new consumer on top of these two standard consumers, and experimenting with that idea. That was really aggressive and bold for us to do, and we didn't really probably have a lot of bandwidth to do it, but it came out of the iteration, and we said, what if we made a whole new type of consumer, and could it be possible? And so you talk to 100 people, everybody's aboard, you feel good about it, you make a prototype as fast as possible, and then you start to realize, like, okay, you may have like some false positives, and you have to be kind of careful with that. And that means, like, all your friends and all the people that you're demoing it with are like really into it, but on the, it may not really pass the test of real product market fit, and that's really important to get into as fast as you can, and you can do that in a really quick, iterative way with various techniques. But the most important thing is to measure them and to be really diligent about that. And we went about doing that. We had to come up with software, actually, internally in order to scale our abilities, right? Because we only had a very small team, and you start to realize, the necessity is the mother of invention. So try to automate some of the processes you want to do, and and next thing you have literally practically another product that has potential, because you just solved your own problem internally as a startup, trying to do customer development at scale, and now you realize, oh, your startup friends have the same problem, they'd like to give that a try. So that's usually how things occur, I think, in the best possible way, where you solve your own problem. But again, we didn't launch that product, and we realized why we didn't want to do it, because we didn't want to really have a majority of the customers who we expected to use it to be, I would say, spammers and people selling penis enlargement pills and such. I mean, that was really what we were looking at the end when we saw this product out in the marketplace. And so we put a stop on it, and we said, look, we're not going to launch it as that. We're going to keep it as an internal growth hacking product. We're going to use it internally for our other clients and other friends that need it, because it's one of these things that, once you put a product out there in the market, it's very difficult to control who's going to be using it. So, a great learning experience, and it got us to pivot eventually after we tested the market and realized, okay, cost for acquisition for a user to buy what we wanted them to buy at scale didn't really quite work out. And as part of that process, we started playing with other pivots on the idea, making it simpler and simpler and simpler. And next thing you know, we came up with another product that worked and had a better product market fit with a completely different audience. But the essence was the same, which was selling a creative product that has value to a good amount of people. Doing this stuff technically, in terms of being a single founder or a co-founder, it does help a lot to do as much as you can internally on paper, really lightweight, click through prototypes, landing pages, all that stuff. And ideally, have someone close to you that has some skin in the game from a technical point of view helps, even if it's an advisor, but having them accessible to you weekly, just to make sure that you're on track, especially if you don't have a technical background. I happen to have one, so I even though I had one, I still needed someone to kind of to check in with, which is really important, because once you start flipping that switch, especially if you're working with teams that are in other time zones and teams that are kind of on demand, it's kind of best to have as much as your ducks in line as possible prior to that. Of course, you're never going to have them all at all, but you know, in terms of efficiency, yeah, you know, you could do a lot of preloading, you know, and conceptualizing and testing before any code is written, more and more these days than before. So definitely look into that. Pre-market MVP testing, essentially. Sorry, sorry for rambling. I had like a lot of coffee.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So I have one like question. Like I'll just tell guys like Artur's startup from like even TechCrunch covered about his idea, and I think at that time like a lot of people were visiting. Like I'm curious to know like, and I think at that time like it was done with Flash when I was working on it. So I wanted, I'm curious to know like why, let's say, why it did not become more popular. Like what was the issue? Like because many people really like the idea. Oh, that's the great idea.
Yeah, the idea. It's interesting. Ideas have, after you do this for a while, it's like there are ideas that are just, I think, are evergreen. They've been tried many times and they failed, and they come back 10 years later by another company, and then they, you know, do something not even maybe as good, but they're because of very unique, you know, positions that they have, they're able to get it into the market, and the market's ready for them. There's a lot of that stuff that's out there that's been shelved, that has been shelved either because the market's not even ready, or because of some other unique failures. You know, speaking of Flash, okay, we, you know, Adobe just announced it's dead in 2020. But, you know, you have to operate with what you have on the table at that second, because the quicker you can get it out, the quicker, you know, you get it in front of people, the quicker you have feedback. And at that time, we had a ton of Flash experience, and the resources that I had in Argentina were very capable Flash developers. On top of that, the technology, 2008-ish, or maybe 2010, it was just at the cusp for, you know, the things that we needed for our product to do, Flash did beautifully. And the emerging other non-Flash technologies, all the various JavaScript, all that stuff, it wasn't quite there. It was, people were experimenting with it, and the resources that were available at the time didn't quite have a handle on them, and it was a flag for us to start with initially. And so we just said, okay, because what's the bet? The bet is that it gets traction. 1 year later, you get funding, and you can totally retrofit, refactor the whole technology and parallel and parity and keep going. And so we got to a phase where we were doing customer development, product market fit testing with Flash, and that was fine. People were more than happy to just open the app up on their Flash-enabled browsers, desktops, and experience it and give us, you know, feedback. And we were looking at tracking really specific demographic groups and their engagement, and you know, and ABC testing each one, and that took time. You know, it took at least 1 month to acquire that group, to do the one-to-one interviewing, persona development, and then tracking their engagement. So it took some time. And well, fast forward, you know, a year later, you know, for whatever reason, we basically were running out of runway, and we had money on the table from clients who were like, "We love your idea." This is what happened. We had a friend who's like, "I have $5,000 I need to spend on solving this problem. I had to buy, I had to decorate the whole office with all new art." I'm like, "Great, go to juicycanvas.com, go with your team after office, have some beers, and everyone makes their own art with our cool technology. And they're like, great, let's do that, right? No brainer. But lo and behold, you had all these variables you didn't consider in that particular use case, which is a pretty big use case, which is corporate client has a lot of money ready to spend on a solution. But there were things that we didn't expect, and they had all of these issues. And I was like, okay, this is a no-go for you guys because of this issue, that issue, whatever. All very edge case stuff, but it was a problem, and I couldn't solve it. And my friend was in charge of this, and she was getting more and more stressed out, and there was money on the table. And guess what? That money paid for a month of development. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to take the weekend and solve yours particular problem. And the way I solved it manually, with manual labor, but of course they thought it was all magic, you know, on their end. That became the next pivot. That became the next product, because I was like, it took me 4 hours to solve their problem, and when I automated, it took me 2 hours. So, you know, how many other people like her? And lo and behold, there were a lot. And that was only something that these eureka moments that you discover when it's on the table, when you put yourself in that position, when you're out there knocking on doors and testing different scenarios. We got lucky. But yeah, Juicy Canvas is still there. I think the idea is obviously, it's like our calling card. Everybody who we show them what we've done and what it can do. It's still viable. It's just a question of, you know, focus and willpower, and we keep it up there for people to stumble upon it, to be inspired by it, because it still has a lot of redeeming social value to everyone who's involved in it.
Now I think, Artur, do you have anything to add? Because I have few questions, like some people asked, so I can maybe.
Yeah. No, I guess I should stop rambling, and I'd love to answer questions.
Okay, so one of the guys, like, to Nikhil, like, what was the takeaway after like Y Combinator? Like, what you got from there? I think you are muted. Yeah.
No, sorry. Is that the Y Combinator question is probably for Nikhil, because he went there, and I went to Startup Chile, so we didn't quite get there. Actually, we never applied.
I didn't get it to Startup Chile, but I got into YC. Anyways, my takeaway was to do things faster. Everything is like, okay, what do you need to do? Okay, well, how can you do that? Like, how long is it going to take you to do it in a day? Or how can you do it like in an hour? And like, and then just like try to work all the time, which is hard to keep up. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's like specific insights, but I think just like you're just surrounded by people who are doing a lot better than you. No matter how well you're doing, someone's doing a lot better, and so you always feel sort of inadequate, which I think is beneficial. And if you like continue to like feel like you're going too slow and you're not doing well enough, you're not growing fast enough, then that's good. So, you know, move faster and like try to hang out with people who are doing better than you.
Yeah, I think the takeaway through all these, the big question with accelerators, and Y Combinator being obviously the top of that, what you discover is the network effect, the support that you get from other people down in the trenches doing what you're doing. It's essential to have that. If you cannot get into any of them, it doesn't matter. You can still create your own ecosystem, even if it's just 3 or 4 people at different levels. The more varied they are, the better, I think, too, because you have more perspectives. But that has exponential value, and that, to me, from everyone I know went to Y Combinator or any of these big accelerators, that was the most value that they got out of it and that they provide, besides, you know, the details. So, you know, if you don't, and reapply, we didn't get in the first time. Yeah, you know why? Because it's static, it's signal versus noise. You know, that guy just had a bad lunch and he just read your proposal too fast, and oh wait, maybe, you know, your proposal was not skim friendly. You know, you rambled a lot, you know, like I'm doing now. Maybe you should just be really scan friendly, because guess what? Nobody reads more than 140 characters anymore. Nobody cares, you know, they just want to look for certain things and boom, 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 and save it for the video, you know, like, but go through the process. It's a really good focusing process. Even if you don't get in, it focuses you on those. Maybe you answered like 10 of the questions, okay, but there's that one question where you're like, oh shit, I can't really have a great answer for that. Well, that's worth $10,000 right there, just that application to you. So answer it, you know, and come back. And so, you know, like I said, if you're in the edge of the world, find, you know, you have no excuse. You know, go online, get 4 other people, tell them why you want to get them once a week together just to talk about stuff, even if it's not even directly talking about stuff, maybe, you know, some other stuff. But at some point, you're going to be talking about, you know, just talking shop and sharing ideas, and you have accountability to each other, which is really important, especially if you don't have a co-founder. Like, you get an advisor, get somebody who's interested in your field and has something, you know, to gain, give advice to. So.
Yeah. So one other question is like, how we can test the idea, like it's an e-commerce related idea, without spending much money on the IT guys.
Sure. Just build a Shopify thing or something. Like, I mean, I tried to do that once, like with an e-commerce idea I had, which didn't go far, but like, there are plenty of e-commerce tools out there. Someone else knows the name of them better than I do, but
Shopify rocks.
Yeah, Shopify is like fine, and you can get set up in like with like $30 or something. You know, as for like getting customers, that's probably the harder part. I mean, if you don't have money. But if, I mean, I think, I don't have too much experience in e-commerce, but I think with any business, what you're trying to prove is like, can you acquire users at less of a cost than what you make per customer? And if you only expect them to use it to purchase once or twice, then you can just run AdWords and see, you know, spend $100, spend $200, and see like, did you make more than $200 in gross profit? And if the answer is yes, then put another $200. And if the answer is no, then figure either why not, or how can you make more money, or acquire customers less. That's
yeah. I learned also that, you know, to me, the startup, the product, it's like half and half. Like I literally would start testing the acquisition. That's, to me, is starting to become more and more important, because if you can't figure that out initially in a basic way, then the rest doesn't really matter. So for example, something that's coming into success a lot more and more is Amazon. I've known people who have put together ideas directly just on Amazon, because it's such an enclosed ecosystem, and you can run ads right on them, and they do all the fulfillment beautifully, quickly, and you're already competing with maybe other products that are similar. So if you have any success there, that's like a really good, you know, indicator that you got something there. You can run those quick, and it's all in one, as opposed to, okay, I got to fit some Facebook ads over there, and then they got to go to my store, and then they got to figure out the UX there, and then it's got to be great there, and it's got to check out. Like Amazon perfected the checkout, you know, and Shopify as well. So yeah, think about, really spend a lot of time focusing on not why I'm selling, but to who I'm selling, and what, you know, where would I find them? What would convince them, compel them that this thing is going to make them better, you know, make them, and don't go, you know, don't sell greed, don't sell fear, sell something positive.
Yeah. There is one more question, like, so like we heard from many VCs, like people ask, like, is it good to have like to be a to have a co-founder, like 2, 3, they usually go with that. So, like, what do you think? Will co-founder make life easier? And
my wife was a co-founder.
Yeah. Actually, no. Oh.
No. Definitely, that's my 2 cents. Don't. It's very luring, but try not to mix those two if you can, because inevitably there will be a chasm. So it's just a matter of time. But yeah, there are pros and cons.
I've seen a few married couples pull it off. Anyways.
Yeah, they're out there.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was and to some extent am still a solo founder, and I had quite a bit of trouble raising money. I did eventually raise a seed round, and still haven't been super successful at raising money in general. But I think the reason people want to see a co-founder is, I think, because they think people on their own have trouble self-motivating, that things get done slower, that the full range of abilities that are required to launch and grow a company aren't represented in one person. So you have to kind of, and I think those are fairly valid criticisms of solo founders. But if you can prove that you yourself have all that covered, and maybe you don't have technical skills like I don't, but you can find people like Narek and like others who are making progress faster than a team of 2 guys where one of the guys is doing all the work, and that's what I did. I mean, I got a product built with an outsourced team, which I didn't spend very relatively little money on, but I was making feature developments every week, and I was getting some customers and revenue. And there are plenty of co-founding teams that don't manage to do that. So I think you just have to show that if you are alone, that you are making the same progress that a co-founding team would make. I think that's all I have on that matter.
Yeah, there's one more question.
Derek, are you a single founder?
No. No. Yeah.
There you go.
So, yeah. There is. I'll ask. I'll ask the question. So, is it so? Many people try to decide what's the right time to outsource and what they should outsource, because since for many of them, hiring a talent in US is quite initially is going to be very costly, and none of them are funded yet. They're spending their own money. So for them, what do you suggest? What's the how you find the right talent, and what's the difference between working with the talent in US, let's say in-house, and let's say offshore or outsourced?
I'm a believer in offshore because for the specific reason you mentioned. When I started, I like Artur had mentioned, I had a technical advisor who had a bit of equity, and that was pretty useful because he could help evaluate the developers. I would speak to them, get a sense, and then he could also evaluate their, look at code samples or what have you. And I think, to evaluate, you look at what else they've done. You can review their code to see how professional they seem or whatnot. What were the questions? How do you get something up with that money? I mean, you can get people for very cheap. I won't go into specific rates, but you can get people who are not excellent at very little rates. And if your app doesn't require something very complicated, which I think most apps don't require something very complicated, you can get things done very cheaply. And if it does have more complex requirements, then, I mean, I can certainly appreciate the not having any money, which I've been in many times, but if you need something built, then yeah, what else do you do? You get it built, and ideally you get it done cheaply.
Did you work like with local talent there, like in house, and when you compared with outsource, like did you find any difference, like or what kind of problems you faced?
I had a CTO that was working alongside me for about a year, and that cost me a lot of money. And I think jury's still out on, should I have done that? I think like the product made a bunch of progress in that time, and he was able to manage a team of developers, and that's when we had raised money and thought we could raise more money. But we also went through a fair bit of cash pretty quickly. So I think do it if you can afford to do it, or maybe just get someone part-time to help manage people overseas.
Yeah, it depends on your comfort level. It's all, there's pros and there's cons. If you're comfortable micromanaging an offshore team, and you want to spend your extra time doing that and doing extra QA, all that, that's fine if you have the time. If you don't have the time and you want things to just be done quicker, with less iterations, your mileage, the thing is, it's honestly, I had to say this, use this word, but it's fairly like a lottery. I mean, I met people, in the US that were like charging whatever, and their head's not in the game, and you just got a bad apple, and they didn't execute. I've had other teams. They all vary, So if you're thinking about going offshore or anything beyond your physical space and your small network, you're going to take some time to really do your due diligence. And the more you have, the more eyes you have, even if you have a technical background, if you have another person just like screening, a team, or the person providing the team, or an individual, you'll just feel better at night. And there are a plethora of techniques, in terms of that process. I understand that, Narek has a really interesting solution in that he provides, that kind of screening up front, and so that really saves a lot of time and such. So, I think things are getting better in that sense as from 10 years ago. But I'm philosophically I like the idea of diversification. So if I can do a blend of things, it helps. Have someone, one individual next to me, either it's full-time or not full-time, and have a distributed team, and it's a big orchestra, really. And then over time, you'll see, what works for you, where you're getting your return on. And honestly, as I'm getting older, I have to tell you, I value, less stress and professionalism and execution. And, sometimes if I have to pay double for that, you're actually saving money. To me, I found out I netted that, like I saved, a lot of blood and aggravation, and somebody did it twice as fast, and we got to where we needed to go. You spend a little more upfront, but you probably over the year are spending less. So just try and experiment. And I know if it's the first time, you need references. You need to speak to people who have worked with them and see their product. Do you like what they made? Do you like their craftsmanship? Do you like the way they communicate? Are they responsive to you? Do they take 5 days to get back to you? If they can't communicate well to you before you started working with them, how are they going to do it when you start paying them? That shows a lot. These little details really matter.
Yeah. So let's say, other thing is like, Nikhil, like if I understand right, your company is more into B2B, right?
Yeah.
So because I got this question, like I wanted to kind of segregate it splitting into two part. So, like, what strategies you use for acquiring clients, like users?
Sure. I guess I mean, email marketing is one thing, aka email spam, and cold calling and like direct sales is another. You know, you can do online ads, Facebook ads. You can target reasonably well on Facebook via their, you know.
Yeah, they're like, which one works best for you? Like, which one has the highest ROI?
Well, highest ROI is going to be email because it costs next to nothing and it produces more than nothing in results. So that's been pretty effective. I mean, I've tried like cold calling and cold emailing. I honestly find like the rate of like interested responses is similar, and you can send 500 emails in a day if you want, and you can also hire someone in the Philippines or something to make 200 calls a day, but that's gonna cost more and take a lot more time. So that's pretty, I think, as an initial way to gauge interest. And I think it also depends. I mean, my B2B, I'm not trying to close huge deals. I mean, they're, $500 a month or something, or 300,000, whatever. If you're trying to close like, $30,000 a month, like enterprise deals, then it's a whole process where you got to find the right person. You're not going to send like a generic email because it's very valuable. Each customer is very valuable. So you go to identify the right person, pitch them. Okay, you need to speak to someone else. They have to talk to their manager. This is what I've heard. I don't have too much experience doing large enterprise sales, but there it's more manual. But and also if you're doing email, then you would also need to get an email list, and there are various ways to do that.
What do you think about like if any of these ads, like Facebook, Google, or LinkedIn ads, if you tried, like, if they work well for you?
Yeah, they have. I've never been very good at like tracking, so I've like tracking conversions.
Usually, by industry, there's a good infographic, but it breaks down conversion rates per industry. But e-commerce is pretty low; it's around 2%, maybe less. It's tough. Like you said, it depends on what your price point is. The higher the price point, the really exponential sales cycle flows. The pivot we made was into B2B, and we're looking at around average sales of 2,000, 2,000, depending on the season. And we've used automated email marketing. We call them warm emails, drip campaigns with emails. And getting the lists, email lists. Those take time unless you write something automated. But what we discovered is there's nothing better than, it's time in is time out. Like, I suggest, focus on the 50 ideal customers you want to close and spend time on building a custom email for this person, even if it takes you 1 hour, 2 hours. If it's worth, if it's worth it. These people are savvy. They know a spam email from not, and we've had good results with that. We blend it, like I said. We have our top 50, and then we have more general, like 2,000 that we warm email automate. And so those two things work. You do what you can, with your time.
Yeah, I know, like, Y Combinator, for example, stresses that you speak to your customers, which no one does enough. But just to like get a sense for how they think about their problems, that can help you determine how to frame it or how to reach people like them, that kind of thing.
It depends on the phase, right? So, guys, if you're exploring, you've got to be, on the phone or get them. But if you already discovered the market and you want to say, okay, let's optimize our marketing offer, our value proposition, all that stuff. Then there's different, tools and techniques. But again, it really, the more crafting that you do that's personalized, the more exponential you get in return. And everyone knows your generic email. And once you get on the blacklist, as a spammer, it's hard to get out of that. So you want to keep your brand clean and hit the right people first.
Yeah. Right. So, okay. So let's say when, like, many people think about scaling their companies, like they do some application and they're kind of stuck after that. Do you suggest them to go into accelerators and try the accelerators, or what do you suggest? Say they are not very clear how they are still in the experiment.
I recommend something called design sprints. You don't have to go all out to this accelerator. There are steps you can do before that can be interventions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're lightweight, and they could provide a lot more return on your time initially. And in this design sprint, you want to have the right kind of people, with the right angles of feedback for why things are kind of stuck, and you're not gonna solve the problem in the sprint, but you're gonna basically brainstorm potential pathways you can take. You'll be questioned on your assumptions. If there's actual metrics that you could bring to the sprint that could be evaluated. So the more you bring to the sprint, the more outcome you're going to have on to the next testing things that you can, actionable tests that you could run. And that's really what it comes down to. Accelerators, that's a big time investment as well. And there are things you can do quickly that they're doing already, so, but yeah, like invent yourself, get other people in on what you're doing at that moment and what the problems are, and then and visualize it. There are very particular, if you look up design sprints, you'll see some really amazing techniques on how to operate that. And by design, I'm not talking like visually design. I'm just talking the problem itself.
Were we talking about when's the right time for an accelerator? Was that the question? Or
yeah,
I think, I mean, like accelerate you. So if you don't have product market fit, the one thing I did myself and I've seen others do is accelerate the wrong thing and grow for the sake of growing, where your margins are negative, or you just haven't figured it out yet. And because I mean, at least for a lot of accelerators, the goal or the final thing is raising money for the startup. And if you're still kind of sputtering around, then you kind of lose that opportunity. And so I think it's really beneficial if at the end of 3 months or whatever, you can have shown real growth on a product that's working and that looks like can be sustainable. But I don't know. I mean, I've seen plenty of companies like execute 4 pivots during Y Combinator and come out successful. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think these were all questions which I had from other people also. Like, if you have anything to add in the end, about all this cycle, like where would you suggest people to pay more attention, like when developing a product?
Business model, I think. I think that oftentimes, I think people like think that this is a service that'll be valuable and that'll like make a positive difference in the world, but that doesn't matter if there's no eventual business model. So I think I skew like very much on that, whereas that's, you know, most people would not say that, but that's what I believe.
Arthur, what do you think? What do you say about that? What is your suggestion?
Yeah, I'm obviously, yeah, you know, it depends what the goals are, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, there needs to be, you know, an engine that's running, that sustains it. You know, that needs to be verified and thought about early on, and even if it may not work, you know, at least think of different models out there. The best ideas are the ones that have this really beautiful synergy where the business model doesn't hinder the essence of why this product exists and what it does, you know. And you have to really find that balance, you know, why am I doing this, you know? For some people, it may, you know, you may have two choices. You may say, well, I'll make a killing with a lot of money on this thing, but I will have to compromise some things for that, you know? You gotta, yeah, hey, whatever gets you out of bed, whatever makes you look in the mirror and smile and say, I'm happy doing this way, you know, and you feel great about it. And early on, it's better to, I think, fall on the side of, you know, the financial, I would say, sustainability first, because once you feel that confidence, that gives you the flexibility to then play around on a higher level, you know, and you'll feel much more confident going into the next idea that you want to do for other reasons, but you already have, you know, the financial model experience prior to that, you know. And so, like, one of my first early startups were more opportunistic in that way, but I'm just an artist at heart, and, you know, at some point that to me didn't last very long. Certain things felt just like going to a factory at some point. And even though it paid the bills and it was great, and I, you know, got my, you know, pat on the back for making it as an entrepreneur, I realized bigger things. And that to me is priceless, because that's going to drive you to the next major thing and the next innovation. Because that, you know, in the end is where you really go big, where you really innovate, where you don't just copy, you know, where you really make a dent or whatever you want to call it. And that takes time, and it takes a lot of failure. But, you know, meaning gets you through all that. And a good co-founder, too, doesn't hurt, even if it's your wife.
Yeah, I think this was no questions, and we heard your suggestions. Yeah, this video will be on YouTube, so other people are going to watch it like later.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So yeah, and if there are any questions, I'll send them to you guys. And yeah, thank you for participating. Thanks for sharing your experience and yeah, giving advices to us. Yeah, and
thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric, for doing this.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Anything else we'll do like after this online meetup.
Yeah, this is good. I hope everyone got something from it for what it's worth, and use this